As you may well have read, Felipe Massa has begun a legal process over the 2008 F1 Championship, specifically the incident surrounding the Crashgate controversy at the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, now almost 15 years ago. He and his legal team have been prompted into action because they believe the response to the scandal was not dealt with properly by the FIA and FOM, and that changed the outcome of the title chase, which Massa finished in second by just 1 point to Lewis Hamilton. This week we've spoken to one of the key players from Massa's legal team, Bernardo Viana, who represents the former F1's drivers' interests in Brazil, to find out more about the case and why they believe they can, in his words, bring the trophy home. I'm John Noble, and joining me today to discuss the Massa case is Alex Kalinauckas. Welcome, Alex.
Hi, John. We're quite warm in London in our separate offices, but so if you do see us sweating, it's not because we've got any lawyers breathing down our own necks, not yet, anyway.
So, first of all, let's start off with a bit of background, because not everyone watching this will have kind of followed the events from 2008. Just summarise briefly, what was Crashgate? What's this controversy all about?
Yeah, I think it's actually quite useful to set the full scene with Crashgate in terms of what we're going to come on to discuss, because there's actually specific timings of the race, the 2008 Singapore Grand Prix, that are pretty key to Massa's legal case. So basically, it's a very famous a sort of episode in Formula One history, very controversial episode in that the then Renault team, obviously it's the same operation that is now Alpine in Formula One. They had their drivers Fernando Alonso and Nelson Piquet Jr. Nelson Piquet Jr., of course, son of triple world champion Nelson Piquet, obviously basically stepfather to the current world champion Max Verstappen. So it links so wonderfully all together with so many of the key players even today. And of course, Fernando Alonso, still very much a key player in Formula One. Basically, he'd had an underperformance in qualifying. He qualified well down the grid, and a plan was hatched. No one knew at the time. Amongst the Renault Formula One team's top brass, you've got Flavio Briatore, the team boss, Pat Simmons, the technical director. And effectively, Nelson Piquet Jr. was asked to crash on purpose at a certain point in the race because they'd underfueled Fernando Alonso. He just made a pit stop and effectively bolted Alonso to the top of the order. And that happened on lap 15. The early part of the race, Felipe Massa had been leading for Ferrari and leading quite comfortably. It was during his great purple patch of form. He'd won in Valencia, all of that. He was really looking like he had a really serious case for winning the 2008 world title. Obviously, as we know, when Massa pitted, unfortunately there was an incident with the fuel hose at the pit stop. It remained in the car. It came off. He had a disastrous race, finished well down the order. His title rival that year, Lewis Hamilton, finishing third. Fernando Alonso won the race. All seems well unless you're Felipe Massa. But it then later transpired, it was almost a year later, after Nelson Piquet Jr. had lost his drive at the team, that basically there was this big conspiracy. But actually, and John, it's this is going to be my question to you now. Why is we talking about this? Why is this so important now? What's so important to Massa's legal case? Actually, it wasn't September, August 2009 that's important. It's actually the Brazilian Grand Prix of 2008. That's sort of where the story, the bigger picture of the story that we weren't aware of, that's where things really kicked off. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. So what happened this year was, everyone had pretty much consigned Crashgate to the history books. It happened, life moved on. But Bernie Ecclestone gave an interview earlier this year suggesting that they knew about it in time to respond. So could have done an investigation before the championship was awarded. And then this archive interview with Charlie Whiting kind of emerged. I'd had it on my computer for years when it was filmed for the Max Mosley documentary that came out. And he ran through Crashgate. He ran through the story of how at the Brazilian Grand Prix in 2008, remember that title decider, Nelson Piquet Sr. came to his office, put his foot up against the door and told him everything about Crashgate, what his son had been through. So it all came to light that weekend. Now that's quite significant because the FI statutes say that a kind of right to review of a championship or effectively a protest, there's a time frame for it. It's basically 4 days before the FI World Championship trophy is handed out at the awards gala. So this didn't come to light till the following summer, but had, in theory, the FIA responded when they first heard about it, had FOM responded when it first heard about it, there could have been time to get that done in time. And this is the crux of the case. The conspiracy that Felipe Massa's legal team are chasing is not about what Nelson Piquet Jr. did, not what Renault team did. That's documented. It's happened. It's how the FIA responded. Did they follow the correct statutes? Did they follow procedure? And why didn't they investigate the matter? Was it, as Ecclestone suggested in this interview, which of course he now claims he cannot remember, did they do it to cover up a scandal which would have been damaging to Formula One? And I think that's what we're pushing through. And it's quite a complicated one as well, Alex. If you go through the point scenario, because it's not just a case of Massa's legal team wanting to get Renault thrown out and Fernando Alonso loses win. It's more tricky than that, isn't it?
It is, yeah, because ultimately what this boils down to, as Massa's legal team have made, you've written an article for motorsport.com, for autosport.com that sets all this out. They're essentially saying, we want the trophy to change hands. That's how high they think this can go. But what's kind of strange is that if a team has cheated in Formula One, well, that team, let's just take one race in isolation, as this case does centre on, that team would be ejected from the results. Now, we know Nelson Piquet is not in the results, but you take Fernando Alonso out of the results, job done. Surely the offending team has been removed. Well, unfortunately for Felipe Massa in this situation, that actually gives Lewis Hamilton more points. He would be bumped up in the order. Massa, I still don't think, scores any points. So that doesn't make any sense at all to sort of be arguing for that. So what my understanding is, John, and please do jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but Massa's legal team is saying, effectively, you either cancel the race, as they seem to say that. Well, in fact, Eccleston's remarks state that outright, that's what the option was for the FIA, was and for Formula One, just to say, right, get rid of the whole race, and that effectively makes Felipe Massa world champion, because he only loses by 1 point, and the points that Lewis gains for finishing third are wiped out. But the other option is to strip it back to lap 14, just before Nelson Piquet crashed, when Massa was leading, and say, actually, this is the point at which the results should be taken, in which case it would be half points, I think. And therefore, again, looking at how the 2008 World Championship then shook out, Massa would be champion. But it's not quite that. So effectively, my question to you is, A, is that right? And B, why is it not necessarily that so straightforward and that black and white that could happen potentially?
No, I mean, from what I understand, that is the gist. It's either Massa's team are pursuing either the race gets annulled and cancelled because it wasn't, a legal race, wasn't a proper motor race as such, or it's taken back to when the outside interference took place, which is lap 14, half points, Massa's champion. They've obviously been analysing it quite a lot. I think one of the crux things of this is Massa's assembled a very strong legal team. Includes Nick DeMarco, who's recognised as one of the world's leading sports experts. He's worked a lot in football. He's challenged governing bodies. He's worked for governing bodies. We ran a long list of all the people involved who are experts in commercial litigation, corporate litigation across many jurisdictions. And this isn't just a case of Felipe's being phoned up by some lawyers that say, well, let's try it like those car crash injury firms that say, no win, no fee, don't worry, we'll push it on. This is world-leading sports law experts who've analysed the situation. They've looked at the regulations, they looked at statutes, they understand sports law. They believe there's a case to be argued for, and that's why they're going for it.
But it's interesting that Massa's not necessarily the only wronged party. You could argue that the whole Ferrari Formula One team has been wronged here, because potentially they've lost a race victory. Okay, let's just assume that the results are stripped back to lap 14 and Massa is declared the winner. It's Ferrari as well would be considered a sort of secondary victim, for want of a better word, but it's just Massa, right? It's not Ferrari at all.
No, from what I understand, as of today, Ferrari has not thrown any support behind it. I think there's been one comment we've seen from current team principal Fred Vasseur, just trying to kind of stay away from the matter. And I think it's very, very tricky and complicated one for Ferrari. We saw in Monza last weekend, there was a banner on the start-finish grandstand that said Felipe 2008 champion by one of the Ferrari fan clubs. So the fans have obviously been fired up by this. But I think it's very tricky for Ferrari because they're currently involved in Formula One. It's regulated by the FIA under commercial terms of FOM. It's very hard for a team to rock the boat in this way. So I think it's unlikely they will take an active part in this. Probably, a watching brief in what happens. But I think Felipe Massa's legal team are happy that if Ferrari want to give support, they would more than welcome it. And they're sitting back. I think the other point from Massa's legal team also is that Felipe doesn't want this to be solely viewed as him targeting Lewis Hamilton, wants to take the title away from Lewis Hamilton. I think he wants justice himself. He feels very wronged. He feels there was a conspiracy against him. And I think what's more important, perhaps crux of this, is getting answers for what really happens now in that, from that moment that Charlie Whiting was told by Nelson Piquet Sr. in that race control in Interlagos that he knew about what had happened. What were the discussions that took place? What was the correspondence that took place? Who made those decisions? Why didn't they take action? And how did it therefore all play out between then and the following summer when it finally came up?
Yes, I think there's various aspects there. One, just very quickly, I wanted to touch on that banner that you pointed out. I think a couple of our colleagues, we were at Monza, we were sat at our desk in the media centre. It was literally right opposite us across the pit lane in the pit straight. It was there on Thursday, gone for Friday. So obviously, someone had decided that wasn't to be permitted for the rest of the weekend. So they got, or maybe the person who had put it up had made their point and felt it had been removed. You never know. But anyway, essentially, what I think it's very interesting. You bring up Lewis Hamilton there, and Massa saying, no, it's not about him. It's not about targeting him. I think it's really important we actually talk about something else related to Lewis Hamilton and the FIA and officials. What could that possibly be? But we'll come to that. We'll come to that later on, John. But I totally agree with your point about Ferrari. The reason why it's not going to be a sort of defendant or a prosecutor, and why it's not joining Massa's case is because it ultimately is a stakeholder in F1 now. Like it's bigger. They are bigger in the sort of wider scheme of things than this one particular incident. So you could totally understand the logic following of why they wouldn't want to join the case. But what I wanted to ask you specifically is, why does today matter? What is the timing of what's happening right now with this case potentially going to court?
Well, at the moment, the situation is that Felipe Massa's legal team have sent kind of a prior notification of their action to the FIA. It went to Stefano Domenicali at the FOM. It went to Mohammed Ben Sulayem at FIA. Basically, it was a notification of what they planned to do, laid out their arguments, which is basically that there was a conspiracy played out that cost Felipe the championship, and losing the world championship was obviously loss of reputation, loss of income, all these reasons. And it laid out arguments that the FIA didn't follow its statutes in the way it handles situations. It's various clauses in the International Sporting Code and regulations that say the FIA must act in a certain way. Their legal team claims that may not have happened. So they've asked for answers from the FIA FOM. Over the summer break, that letter went. They got a response from FIA FOM basically saying, this is a huge case. We need weeks and weeks and weeks, potentially up to 3 months to come up with some arguments. Can you back off? And Massa's team came back and said, that's too long. This is a very serious case. This knowledge of this case has been known for years, if not, the escalation for months. They wanted an answer by Friday today, prior to them forcing the issue potentially and going to the UK High Court. For what I understand, as we record this, FI and FOM have asked for a little bit more time, not necessarily the full 3 months, but a bit more time to get matters in hand, which for now Massa's team are happy with. They're waiting time, but I think they're quite crystal clear that they want the answers. They want the matter to be taken seriously, and they aren't going to sit back twiddling their thumbs. They're on the front foot with this, and I expect things to move forward quite quickly. And I think one thing that will be fascinating, Alex, you've mentioned briefly the implications for Lewis, is how F1 views it now, and especially I think the Mercedes team, because when you talk about protests of a previous world championship, we talk about events that have happened afterwards, people have already started linking it to 2021 in Abu Dhabi, haven't they?
They have, yeah. And just before we get to that, I think it's interesting because we've had conversations with various people in the F1 paddock who just dismiss it instantly, like, what's Felipe thinking? Like, what, you can't change this? What's going on? Well, if anything, it's a question of morality. Like, just because something seemed to have been dealt with in the past, just if more information comes to light, and Eccleston's remarks are pretty suggestive that there is a case to be had here. It's basic morality. This case must be heard if it is as serious as it all does appear. But yeah, what's really interesting, because, and again, I sort of amused myself in laying out all the various players of the case and how a lot of them are still around now, and how a lot of them, those names pop up again when it comes to Abu Dhabi 2021. You think of Verstappen, Hamilton, all of that, and blah blah blah. What's really interesting is that if this case gets as far as it possibly could, and things are established as precedents and things are changed, Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes are surely, you'd logically think they would have a similar case to be able to present about Abu Dhabi 2021. So if we take, for example, the suggestion that Singapore 2008 should be rolled back to lap 14, well, that's exactly what Mercedes wanted to happen regarding the safety car rules at the end of the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in 2021. They basically said, right, well, it wasn't followed properly, roll it back to the penultimate lap, call the race there. And that was dismissed because the stewards said, well, you can't sort of retrospectively say that's shortening a race after the fact. You can't do that. That's why that was dismissed. So I think that it would be tricky for that argument to hold water in terms of Singapore 2008. But the bigger thing, John, am I right in thinking that Massa's legal team are essentially potentially going to be arguing the FIA shouldn't be allowed to mark its own homework? Because with all these things, these appeals can go to the Court of Appeal, and that's basically as far as it can go. And obviously then there's the time things and the statutes and all of that. Basically they saying, well, hang on a minute, that's just not on. That's what really should be challenged. And if that is the case, then that follows on, and that's why it's all linked. It's sort of, it comes back to Abu Dhabi 2021 in a similar way, because that ultimately was why Mercedes decided we can't pursue this appeal as potentially as far as it might go, because we know what the answer will be already.
Yeah, I think it will come down to what the contract, not in terms of a direct contract that drivers have with teams, but the contract between Massa racing under an F1 super license for the FIA. What duty did the FIA have to Massa, and what duty did Massa have to the FIA? Because he signs up for regulations. The regulations state that you've got 4 days before the title is awarded is your deadline for right to review. But equally, then for that to be in place, the FIA had to follow all its statutes, act in a way that was legitimate, was within its own actions. And if Massa's lawyers feel that one part of the contract wasn't followed, then that surely opens a door for other parts of it to move around and question. I think the FIA statutes do declare that the FIA International Court of Appeal is the highest authority, and it is totally independent. The FIA has long said, the lawyers are totally independent, although it's the FIA International Court of Appeal. It's independent lawyers. It's not part of the governing body. But I think there always have been questions, and I think this was something that Mercedes in the end decided against pursuing Abu Dhabi 2021, was that it was the last authority, the FIA International Court of Appeal. It very rarely goes against the FIA. So I think they felt that there was no further grounds to take it. You can't go to an outside court to settle matters like this. So I think this issue, the issue of contracts between competitors and the governing body, the issue of the regulator following the rules to the letter, due care and attention to follow processes. I think all this will become essential to the case. And I think it was very, very interesting when I spoke to Bernardo about the matter. He said there's a lot involving the conversations in 2008, 2009 that's not public. There's a lot that's taken place behind the scenes, and they think every conversation, anyone who's involved in that decision-making process from when the FI first found out until the following summer when the process meant, all those conversations should come out, all the involvement should come out, who said what, who acted in what way, who made decisions, and perhaps then we'll come to the truth. And the truth may well be the thing that Felipe Massa wants to know above all else. Was there a conspiracy? Was it dealt with as it could have been dealt with? Is it simply Bernie Ecclestone saying something to create a bit of drama as he's done throughout his career? We know he lobs hand grenades out there and causes trouble with very little consequences. So I think it's a quest for the truth, basically. And that's still something we don't have I still think that's one of the issues about Abu Dhabi 2021, is there's still so many questions we have about what took place that afternoon. I think am I right in thinking even the FI investigation didn't interview Michael Massey about what happened that day, which is, still incredible. We've not had his side and his version of events, which I'm sure is something that all of us would like to know.
Oh, absolutely. It's utterly fundamental in that case. But I think maybe it'd be important to end on sort of a couple of the more minor points here in terms of I think first of all, Felipe Massa is very lucky, and the FIA and FOM are very unlucky in that the 2023 season is a season utterly starved of narratives. So, this case may potentially wouldn't be getting the airtime, the attention that it is if that weren't the case. But I think you could well say, well, okay, you're being journalists, spinning this up, blah, 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 whatever. Well, okay, fine, that's your opinion. But don't forget that there's morality at the heart of this. Like Ecclestone's comments, as I said earlier, are suggested that something at the very fundamental bottom level should be investigated, because they're pretty black and white. I think Massa is right to demand answers over them at the very least. But the other thing, John, is also, because it's almost like a how the sausage is made sort of thing when it comes to these legal cases. Do we really think, because Massa's come out and said this is not about money, but do we really think that basically, what my question is basically, are Felipe Massa's legal team shooting for the stars in terms of saying we want the world title change, and maybe they'll accept something smaller, maybe it's some sort of, I don't know, statement action, potentially financial from the other stakeholders? Do you think that's potential? Is that sort of a realistic, or is this just a question that that we got to cover?
I think, I've spoken to Felipe and I've spoken to Bernardo, the lawyer. I think if the FI and FOM, said, okay, we got it wrong, keep it quiet, we'll give you X million dollars, are you happy? I don't think they would be. I think they'd be much prefer the truth to come out and to know what really happened and to get some answers to settle that uncertainty in their head than it being purely about, chasing a financial reward. I mean, in the end, the financial reward, the financial aspects will come into it, as it inevitably does, because lawyers don't work for free. Everyone's, chasing their value. And, the letter that Massa's team sent to FOMFI mentioned the loss of earnings, loss of reputation he had suffered. So it is an element of it. But I think above all else, they just want answers. And I think that's the thing they haven't got at the moment. There's too much uncertainty, too much concern about a conspiracy. And they want to find out what really happened.
Absolutely. And I think, as I said, that's fundamental, isn't it? We just want to know the utter reality, the total truth. And that's why this is a really important case for Massa to pursue and a topic for us to discuss.
Yep. I think it's certainly an interesting scenario overall, and one that's surely going to evolve over time. Well, thanks for joining me, Alex. And thanks everyone for watching. Make sure you stick around and subscribe to the latest kind of on the Massa case and also what's going on in Formula 1 23.